Good evening, dear friends, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Wherever you're listening from tonight, maybe tucked safely under the blankets, curled up in your favorite quiet corner of the house, or perhaps lying somewhere peaceful while the world slowly quiets down outside. I'm so happy you're here with me. Take a slow, gentle breath in. Let your shoulders soften and drop. Maybe pull the blanket or duvet up just a little higher, and allow the day to quietly drift away. The grand Art Deco mansion of Eldridge Hall was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant chandeliers cast golden light on polished mahogany, where guests in silk and tweed played their roles in a weekend of music and mystery. Then Antonio Rossi, the legendary violin maker, was found dead in his workshop, clutching a priceless Stradivarius, his face twisted in agony from poison. The violin strings still hummed faintly, as if echoing his final breath. Police saw a simple suicide from despair over debts. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theatre of elegance was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The drawing-room of Eldridge Hall smelled of hothouse roses and the faint, rich curl of Cuban cigar smoke. Crystal chandeliers tinkled softly overhead, catching the golden light on velvet curtains and smooth mahogany panels. Rain tapped against tall windows, bringing a chill that the crackling fire in the marble hearth fought to keep at bay. Hercule Poirot arrived just after 8, invited to appraise a rare instrument. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve, his small, precise hands moving with habitual care. The air also carried sandalwood cologne from Lord Eldridge, who welcomed guests with champagne flutes wrapped in crisp linen napkins. Antonio Rossi stood near the centre of the room, the focal point of every eye. In his rough tweed jacket, he looked slightly out of place among the silk evening gowns and polished dinner suits. He held a Stradivarius violin gently, almost reverently, and spoke of a secret hidden within its ancient wood. A formula, he claimed, that could change the very soul of music. His voice carried over the distant notes of a piano being played in the next room. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head and watched. Observe, mon ami. This man plays the role of genius with great confidence. Yet notice how his fingers tremble ever so slightly when they brush the polished varnish, and the performance is bold, but the body whispers doubt. Lady Eldridge moved through the guests like a dancer on stage. Her silk gown rustled softly, her kid gloves brushing arms, as she offered more dry champagne that chilled the tongue. She laughed at the right moments, but Poirot saw her gaze flick toward Rossi with something colder than politeness. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how she avoids meeting his eyes for more than a second? The mask of the perfect hostess is carefully worn. Marcus Hale, Rossi's young apprentice, hovered nearby. His tweed jacket carried the faint smell of varnish and sawdust from the workshop. He spoke of his master's brilliance in tones that sounded rehearsed, adjusting the violin case with precise movements. The grandfather clock chimed 9, its deep notes rolling through the parquet floor. You ask yourself, why does this loyal student keep glancing at the instrument as though it belongs to him already? Loyalty performed so perfectly often hides ambition. Elena Rossi, the violin maker's wife, sat beside the fire. Her silk dress caught the warm light, and the scent of Chanel perfume drifted from her as she sipped sweet liqueur. She appeared bored, almost indifferent, crossing her legs with deliberate grace. Doors closed softly behind servants carrying trays. Ah, but you say Poirot sees drama where there is only marriage fatigue. bear with me. This role of the neglected wife lacks the small, genuine signs of affection. The indifference, it is too complete. Victor Lang, a rival collector, leaned against the mantel, puffing on his cigar. The smoke curled upward like stage mist. His tweed suit felt rough against the velvet armchair, and his laughter at Rossi's stories came a fraction too loudly. He gripped his crystal glass tightly enough that his knuckles whitened. Watch this performance carefully. Is it friendship or envy wearing a friendly mask? The mask slips. Did you catch the quick tightening of the jaw? Sophia Vale, the celebrated violinist, stood apart, running her fingers lightly over the Stradivarius strings. A single haunting note floated into the room and silenced conversation for a moment. Her own perfume, Worth, mingled with the wood smoke from the fire. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how her eyes linger on the violin's hidden scroll. Greed performing as artistic appreciation? The group eventually drifted toward the workshop, a glass-walled conservatory converted into Rossi's private domain. A varnish and sawdust overpowered the floral scents from the house. Tools lay neatly on mahogany benches, and velvet cloths protected half-finished instruments. Rossi opened the Stradivarius once more and pointed to a concealed compartment, hinting at the priceless formula inside. Footsteps echoed on the cold marble floor just outside. Poirot arranged a few small objects on a side table into perfect symmetry. His green eyes gleamed with quiet interest. The tension rises. Someone in this elegant cast will soon forget their lines. Then came the cry. Rossi staggered, clutching his throat. The violin fell to the floor with a discordant crash. A bitter medicinal smell rose from the spilled coffee beside him. Guests rushed forward, silk rustling frantically. Poirot stepped calmly into the chaos and knelt beside the body. Mon Dieu! Would the stage has taken its first victim? Police arrived within the hour. Heavy boots thudded across parquet. They examined the coffee cup, declared the death suicide, poison self-administered, driven by debts Rossi could no longer pay. Case closed, they said. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. This suicide, it is too neat, too convenient. A man truly despairing does not first show off his greatest treasure to a room full of rivals. The little grey cells, they whisper otherwise. Now consider Lady Eldridge through the director method. The performance, she plays the perfect hostess, offering champagne, smiles, gentle words of sympathy. Her handkerchief dabs at dry eyes. The voice trembles at exactly the correct moments. The tell, but observe, the handkerchief stays perfectly dry, the mascara never runs, and the posture remains too erect for genuine shock. The psychology, I recall the case of Roger Ackroyd, where a woman performed widow's grief so flawlessly that even Poirot was briefly deceived. She had rehearsed every sob, every glance in the mirror, yet one detail betrayed her. Her hands never shook when she reached for her teacup. True emotion disrupts the body. Performance keeps it disciplined. The truth, therefore, Lady Eldridge knew of this death before it happened. Her sorrow is costume, not feeling. You see it now, no? The guests dispersed to their rooms. Rain drummed harder against the windows. The fire burned low. The chandelier's light dimmed. The stage was set. The actors had taken their places. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players. The morning after the tragedy of the drawing-room of Eldridge Hall smelled once again of strong continental coffee and fresh lilies arranged in tall crystal vases. Sunlight struggled through heavy rain clouds, casting a pale glow across the velvet curtains, now drawn halfway back. The fire had been freshly stoked. Its warm crackle fought the lingering chill that seeped from the marble floors and the terrace beyond. Hercule Poirot stood near the centre of the room, like a director surveying his cast. He adjusted his magnificent moustache with precision and invited each suspect to sit in turn, on the polished mahogany chairs arranged in a careful semicircle. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 10 o'clock, its deep, measured tones rolling through the space. Lord Eldridge entered first. His sandalwood cologne arrived before him, mingling with the faint scent of furniture wax that clung to the room. He played the role of the shocked and responsible host with dignity, shoulders squared, voice steady. He described the previous evening, Rossi's proud demonstration, the champagne, the laughter. His hands rested calmly on the arms of his chair, tweed jacket immaculate. Observe, mon ami, this lord performs authority and sorrow with great control. But notice how his eyes shift away when he mentions the violin itself. A man truly grieving would look at the instrument with pain. Here there is only careful avoidance. Lady Eldridge followed. Her silk morning robe rustled softly as she sat. She accepted a cup of hot coffee, the steam rising in delicate curls. She spoke of Rossi as a guest of genius, a man whose death had shocked them all. Her kid gloves smoothed the fabric over her knees again and again. The careful observer will notice the handkerchief she carries is folded too neatly, never unfolded. You watch with Poirot, no. Grief requires disorder. This composure is rehearsed. Marcus Hale, the apprentice, came next. His rough tweed jacket still carried the faint smell of varnish and wood from the workshop. He sat forward on the edge of his chair, speaking earnestly of his master's brilliance, of years spent learning at Rossi's side. His fingers drummed a faint nervous rhythm on the leather armrest. Ask yourself, why does this devoted student never once mention the secret formula Rossi revealed last night? Loyalty should burn with curiosity. This performance of devotion feels selective. Elena Rossi, the widow, entered wearing black silk, and the scent of Chanel perfume surrounded her like a veil. She played the grieving wife with practiced restraint, eyes lowered, voice low and trembling at exactly the right moments. She claimed she had known nothing of any serious debts, nothing of danger. A crystal glass of water stood untouched beside her. The surface never rippled. Ah, but you say, perhaps she is simply numb with sorrow. Bear with me. True numbness makes the hands shake, makes the voice catch on real memories. This grief is too symmetrical, too complete. Victor Lang arrived puffing on a fresh cigar. The smoke curled upward toward the chandelier, blending with the faint wood smoke from the fire. He leaned back in his chair, laughing briefly at his own memories of Rossi. Old rivalries, friendly wagers over rare instruments. Yet his grip on the crystal ashtray was tight enough to make the glass click against the wood. Watch this performance carefully. Is it the bluff camaraderie of a true collector, or the mask envy wears when it must pretend friendship? The laughter comes a fraction too late. Sophia Vale was the last to enter. She had changed into a crisp linen blouse, but the elegance of last night's Worth perfume still clung to her. She described playing the Stradivarius, how its tone had made the room fall silent. Her fingers moved unconsciously, as though still holding the bow. When Poirot asked about the hidden compartment, her eyes flickered for the briefest instant toward the workshop door. The spotlight of truth is beginning to warm. Did you see that tiny hesitation? Ambition performing as artistic reverence is never quite convincing. Poirot moved among them like a director testing lines. He asked for alibis, for exact movements after Rossi collapsed. Lord Eldridge claimed he had stepped onto the terrace for air. No one had seen him return. Lady Eldridge said she had gone to fetch more champagne, yet the tray had remained untouched. Hale spoke of fetching tools from the workshop, but the door had been locked from the inside. Elena said she had remained by the fire the entire time. Lang admitted he had gone to the library for a book, but no one recalled seeing him there. Vale said she had stayed near the piano, yet the bench was cold when servants passed later. Each answer arrived smoothly, too smoothly. Contradictions appeared like missed cues in a play. The tension rises. Someone's script is about to falter. Poirot poured himself a small cup of coffee, its bitterness sharp on the tongue. He arranged the spoons on the tray into perfect alignment. Consider the psychology, mes amis. When a person must hide guilt, they often over-prepare their innocence. They rehearse every word, every gesture. Truth, however, does not rehearse. Truth stumbles. Truth forgets small details. Lies flow with unnatural smoothness. He looked at each face in turn. Lord Eldridge, too perfect a host, even in tragedy. Lady Eldridge, too dry-eyed for sudden loss. Hale, too eager to prove loyalty. Elena, too indifferent until pressed. Lang, too quick to laugh away rivalry. Vale, too possessive of an instrument that was never hers. The rain began again, soft at first, then harder against the tall windows. The fire crackled, sending sparks up the chimney. The chandelier tinkled faintly as a draught moved through the room. Poirot set his cup down with a soft clink. Every actor has now taken their mark. They have spoken their opening lines, but who among them spoke truth, and who performed lies? Chapter 3. The First Act. The workshop felt colder now that it was officially a crime scene. The sharp smell of varnish still hung in the air, undercut by the faint bitter trace of the poisoned coffee that had dried on the mahogany bench. Tools lay exactly where they had fallen. Chisels, planes, small clamps, each piece gleaming under the weak morning light that filtered through rain-streaked glass. The Stradivarius rested in its open case, strings silent, the hidden compartment now empty and exposed. Hercule Poirot moved slowly among the benches. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and bent to examine a single dark speck of cigar ash on the cold marble floor just inside the terrace door. The fire in the adjoining sitting room crackled behind him, sending occasional pops into the stillness. He summoned the suspects one by one for deeper questioning. Lord Eldridge arrived first. His sandalwood cologne seemed stronger today, as though applied to steady nerves. He repeated that he had only stepped onto the terrace for a moment of fresh air. Poirot pointed to the ash. "This ash, mon ami, is not from your usual brand. Cuban, yes, but darker, richer. Someone else stood here." Lord Eldridge's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before he recovered. The mask of calm authority held, but the flicker was there. Lady Eldridge came next. She wore a simple grey silk dress, kid gloves folded neatly in her lap. She admitted, under gentle pressure, that Rossi had owed her family a considerable sum, money lent quietly years ago, never fully repaid. Her voice remained even, too even. Poirot watched her hands. They did not tremble. They did not even clasp each other tightly. "You see with Poirot, non?" Genuine shock or sorrow makes the body betray itself. This stillness is rehearsal. Marcus Hale entered with the smell of sawdust still clinging to his rough tweed. He spoke again of his devotion, of the years spent learning every curve of a violin's form. But when Poirot asked directly about the secret formula, Hale hesitated. I knew he was working on something, but he never showed me. His fingers began their nervous tapping on the edge of the bench. Ask yourself, why does a loyal apprentice lie about something so central to his master's life? This role of innocence is beginning to fray. Elena Rossi appeared composed in black, Chanel perfume drifting as she moved. She spoke of her husband's moods, his obsession with perfection, his recent arguments over money. For the first time her voice cracked, genuinely, when she mentioned a late-night quarrel 2 weeks earlier. Poirot noted the change. The tears that appeared now were real. The earlier performances had been dry. The careful observer sees the difference. When the mask is no longer needed, real feeling emerges. Victor Lang came in puffing a cigar, smoke curling towards the ceiling. He admitted he had once tried to buy the Stradivarius outright, offered a fortune. Rossi refused. Lang laughed it off as a collector's passion, but Poirot produced a small folded paper found in the library, a draft agreement dated 3 days ago, with Lang's signature. The laughter stopped. Watch this performance. Envy no longer hides so easily behind jest. Sophia Vale was last. She ran her fingers along the violin scroll as though greeting an old friend. She spoke of the tone, the resonance, the magic of the instrument. Poirot asked her to play a single note. Her bow hesitated over the place where the hidden compartment had been, just for a heartbeat. The spotlight grows warmer. Did you catch that tiny pause? The artist's reverence is beginning to look very much like possession. Now let us apply the director method to Marcus Hale. The performance. He sits humbly, speaks of mentorship with lowered eyes and steady voice. The hands rest quietly in his lap, or the posture that of a grieving student. The tell, but observe, the fingers tap an irregular rhythm against his knee. The breathing remains perfectly even when the secret is mentioned. True devotion would quicken the pulse, would make the voice catch. The psychology, I am reminded of the Blue Train affair, where a young man performed perfect loyalty to his employer. He had practiced every gesture, downcast eyes, soft voice, helpful hands. Yet one detail betrayed him. When questioned closely, his breathing never changed. A truly shocked or grieving man breathes faster. The body cannot lie about oxygen. The little grey cells understand this. The machine of the human form never rehearses its reactions. The truth, therefore, Marcus Hale knew far more about the secret formula than he admits. His devotion is costume. His ambition is the true role. You see it now, no? The first real crack has appeared. Reflection. In every theatre of crime, the actors wear masks to protect what is most fragile. Their real desires, their shame, their greed. Humans learn early to perform. The child smiles for approval. The lover hides jealousy. The debtor pretends confidence. Society applauds the perfect performance and punishes the unmasked truth, yet masks are heavy. They tire the wearer. The body grows careless. A finger taps. A breath steadies too perfectly. Eyes avoid what they should seek. In this case, as in so many before, the first act reveals the strain. One mask has cracked, not fallen, but cracked. More will follow. Theatrical wisdom for you, mon ami. Truth does not need to remember its lines. Lies must. Listen for the moment the actor forgets. And the rain eased outside. A single ray of sunlight touched the Stradivarius, catching the golden varnish. The first act concluded. Some masks had cracked. Chapter 4. Rehearsed Lines. The library of Eldridge Hall had become Poirot's temporary command post. Leather-bound books lined the walls, their aged scent mingling with the fresh wood smoke drifting from the low fire. A single reading lamp cast a warm circle over the mahogany table, where Poirot had arranged documents, a coffee cup, and a small crystal ashtray into perfect symmetry. Outside, the rain had stopped. The terrace lay silent and wet under a pale afternoon sky. He summoned the suspects again, this time not for gentle conversation, but for pressure. Lord Eldridge entered first. His tweed jacket looked slightly less immaculate today. A faint crease showed at the elbow. Poirot placed before him a small envelope containing the cigar ash found near the workshop door. "This ash, my lord, matches the brand Victor Lang prefers. Yet you told us you were alone on the terrace." Lord Eldridge's hand paused halfway to his pocket. "I may have shared a cigar with him briefly. It was nothing." Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. "Observe, mon ami. This performance of the innocent host begins to strain. The lines are no longer smooth. When the script falters, truth peeks through the cracks." Lady Eldridge arrived next. She sat with the same careful grace, but her kid gloves remained tightly clasped in her lap. Poirot produced a small receipt, dated 2 weeks earlier, from a London chemist. "Arsenic, madame, a very small quantity, purchased in your name." Her lips parted, then closed. "It was for rats, in the stables." The fire crackled sharply. "You see with Poirot, no?" The excuse arrives too quickly. A rehearsed line, delivered under spotlight. Real innocence would hesitate, would show confusion. This is preparation. Marcus Hale came in smelling faintly of varnish and nervous sweat. Poirot opened a small wooden box taken from the workshop. Inside lay a vial with traces of the same poison. "These were your tools, monsieur. You cleaned them, yes, but not perfectly." Haley's fingers began their familiar tapping faster now. I handle many substances. It means nothing." Ask yourself, why does the loyal apprentice suddenly speak in fragments? The role of innocence grows heavy. The mask trembles. Elena Rossi followed. Her black silk dress rustled as she sat. For the first time, anger flashed beneath the surface of her composure. Poirot spoke softly. "You argued with your husband the night before last." Loudly. Servants heard the word poison used, not as threat, but as accusation. Her Chanel perfume seemed sharper, almost defensive. He was being dramatic. He always was. The careful observer notes, indifference has become defiance. The performance shifts when pressure mounts. Victor Lang entered puffing his cigar more aggressively than usual. Smoke curled toward the ceiling like a signal of resistance. Poirot laid out the draft agreement found in the library, Lang's signature bold at the bottom. "You attempted to purchase the Stradivarius and its secret 3 days ago. Rossi refused, yet you told us it was a casual conversation." Lang laughed, too loudly. "Collectors haggle. It's what we do." Watch this performance carefully. The bluff grows thinner. Envy no longer hides behind easy laughter. Sophia Vale was last. She stood rather than sat, fingers brushing the edge of the table as though still longing for the violin's neck. Poirot placed before her a small velvet cloth found near the Stradivarius case. "Fibres from your evening gown, mademoiselle, caught in the hidden compartment. You examined it closely after the others left the workshop." Her posture stiffened. "I was curious. An artist may look." "Ah, but you say curiosity is not crime. Bear with me. When the artist becomes the collector, the performance changes key. Poirot moved among them like a director calling for a second rehearsal. Alibis, once delivered with polish, now cracked under repetition. Lord Eldridge's terrace visit grew longer each time he told it, and Lady Eldridge's errand for champagne became vague. I needed a moment alone. Hale's trip to fetch tools now included a mysterious pause. I thought I heard something. Elena's place by the fire suddenly had no witnesses. Lang's library visit had no book to show for it. Vale's moment at the piano had no one who remembered hearing music. Each line, once fluent, began to stumble. The tension in the room thickened like cigar smoke. The chandelier above them tinkled faintly as a draught moved through the old house. Poirot poured himself a small measure of strong coffee. Its bitter warmth steadied his thoughts. He made an expressive gesture with his small hands. Rehearsed lines, they are beautiful, until the audience asks for truth. Then they falter. They repeat. They contradict. Truth requires no rehearsal. Truth simply is. He looked at each face in turn. The host who suddenly could not recall exact minutes. The wife whose dry eyes now glistened with strain. The apprentice whose tapping fingers betrayed rising panic. The widow whose indifference had hardened into anger. The rival whose laughter had become forced. The artist whose reverence had become possession. The fire burned lower. The light outside faded toward evening. Wood smoke drifted across the room. Poirot set his cup down with a soft final clink. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. Truth needed no rehearsal. Chapter 5. The Mask Slips. The drawing-room of Eldridge Hall had become a stage under full spotlight. Heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight against the late afternoon gloom, shutting out the last grey light. The fire burned high, sending warmth into every corner, while the scent of hothouse roses and lingering cigar smoke thickened the air. Crystal chandeliers tinkled softly overhead as a draught moved through the old house. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, small but commanding, his green eyes gleaming with purpose. He had summoned them all together. No more private interviews, no more gentle probing. Tonight the masks would be tested until they cracked. Lord Eldridge sat rigidly in his usual armchair, tweed jacket buttoned to the throat. His sandalwood cologne could no longer mask the faint smell of nervous sweat. Poirot began with him. "Milord, you claimed you were on the terrace the entire time after Rossi collapsed. Yet the cigar ash we found matches Victor Lang's brand, and the terrace door was locked from the inside when the body was discovered." Lord Eldridge's hand rose to his collar, tugging once. I may have stepped back inside briefly to fetch my lighter." The pause was too long. The mask of the dignified host trembled. Lady Eldridge sat beside him, kid gloves folded in her lap like a shield. Poirot turned to her next. "Madame, the chemist's receipt for arsenic is in your name. You say it was for rats. Yet the stables have not had rats in years. And the amount purchased was exactly what was needed to kill a man." Her lips parted, then pressed into a thin line. I cannot explain it." For the first time her voice cracked, not from grief, but from strain. The perfect hostess performance was buckling. Marcus Hale sat forward on the edge of his chair, fingers tapping rapidly against his knee. Poirot produced the small vial found among Hale's tools. "This poison residue, monsieur, matches the coffee cup, and you were the last person to handle the cup before Rossi drank from it." Hale's tapping stopped abruptly. His face paled. I would never." The words came out in fragments. The loyal apprentice role was collapsing under the weight of evidence. Elena Rossi sat apart, black silk dress absorbing the firelight. When Poirot looked at her, something raw flashed in her eyes. Anger, not sorrow. You told us you remained by the fire. Yet a servant saw you near the workshop door moments before Rossi collapsed, and you were heard saying, "If you won't give me what I deserve, I'll take it." Elena's hands clenched the arms of her chair. He betrayed me. For years. With money, with other women, I hated him. The indifference had vanished. Real emotion, hot, bitter, spilled out at last. Victor Lang puffed his cigar too hard, smoke billowing like a defensive cloud. Poirot laid the forged purchase agreement on the low table between them. You tried to buy the Stradivarius and its secret. When Rossi refused, you forged documents to claim ownership after his death, yet you played the role of the jovial rival. Lang laughed, once harshly. Business is business. He owed me. The laughter died in his throat. The mask of friendship had shredded. Sophia Vale stood near the fireplace, fingers twitching as though still holding a bow. Poirot spoke quietly. Mademoiselle, the fibres from your gown were caught in the hidden compartment. You examined it after we all left the workshop. You wanted the formula for yourself, to make your name immortal. Vale's shoulders began to shake. I only wanted to understand it, to play like no one else ever could. Her voice broke. Tears, real tears, slid down her cheeks. I didn't kill him. I swear it. The artist's mask of reverence shattered completely. Beneath it lay raw obsession, fear, and now genuine despair. Poirot stepped forward, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. Now we come to the heart of the performance. He turned to the entire group. Each of you has played a role beautifully. The grieving widow, the loyal apprentice, the generous host, the devoted artist, the friendly rival, the perfect hostess, but every performance has its flaw, its tell, and tonight the masks have slipped. He paused, letting the fire's crackle fill the silence. Now, hit the director method for Sophia Vale, the performance. She played the passionate artist, fingers graceful on the strings, voice full of wonder and admiration. She spoke of the violin's soul as though it were her own. The tell, but observe, every time the hidden compartment was mentioned, her breath quickened unnaturally. Her fingers twitched toward it like a thief toward gold. True reverence is calm. Obsession is restless. The psychology, I recall the death on the Nile case, where a woman performed love so convincingly that even Poirot believed her devotion. She rehearsed her smiles, her tender glances, yet her hands always clutched too tightly when the object of her desire was near. The body cannot lie about possession. The little grey cells see what the heart tries to hide. The truth, therefore, mademoiselle, that your admiration was not for the music, but for what the secret could bring you. Fame, immortality, power. The mask has fallen, beneath it, the true face at last. Vale sank into a chair, sobbing openly now. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, the fire popped loudly. A single violin string hummed faintly in the workshop beyond, perhaps imagination, perhaps echo. Poirot arranged the crystal glasses on the side table into perfect alignment. The mask had fallen. Beneath it, the true face emerged. Chapter 6. Behind the curtain. The fire in the drawing room had burned low, leaving only glowing embers that sent faint wood smoke curling toward the darkened chandelier. The scent of roses had faded. Now the room smelled mostly of old leather bindings, cigar remnants, and the sharp trace of Chanel perfume that clung stubbornly to the air. Pea velvet curtains remained closed, sealing the house against the night. Hercule Poirot moved quietly among the shadows, small hands arranging scattered papers, and a single crystal glass into perfect order on the low mahogany table. The time had come to look behind the curtain, into the hidden connections, the private letters, the motives no one had dared speak aloud. He began in the library. A small brass key, found earlier in Rossi's coat pocket, opened a locked drawer in the host's desk. Inside lay a thin bundle of letters tied with black ribbon. The paper felt crisp and slightly singed at one edge, as though someone had once tried to burn them. Poirot read by lamplight. The first letter was from Lord Eldridge to Rossi, dated 4 months earlier. You will repay the debt in full by the end of the year, or I shall make public certain indiscretions from your past. Blackmail, disguised as business. The mask of the gracious host had hidden a creditor's cold hand. Next, Poirot moved to the small sitting room where Lady Eldridge sometimes retreated. Behind a loose panel in the fireplace surround, discovered when he noticed fresh mortar dust, he found another envelope. Inside was a single page in her elegant hand. I lent you the money because I loved you once. You repaid me with betrayal. Now you will pay in another way. The words were not signed, but the perfume that clung to the paper was unmistakably hers. Resentment had worn the mask of hospitality for years. Marcus Hale's room yielded the most startling secret. Under the mattress, wrapped in a velvet cloth, lay a draft contract, unsigned but witnessed, stating that upon Rossi's death, Hale would inherit full rights to any technical innovations developed during his apprenticeship. The signature line bore Rossi's name in ink that had never dried properly. Forged. The loyal apprentice had already prepared his inheritance. Greed had rehearsed its lines long before the poison was poured. Elena Rossi's dressing-table drawer, when opened with a hairpin, revealed a small bundle of letters tied with red silk. They were not from her husband. They were from Victor Lang. Passionate, reckless words written over 2 years. My darling, when he is gone, the Stradivarius and everything else will be ours. The grieving widow and the jovial rival had shared more than polite conversation. Love had worn the mask of indifference. Alliance had worn the mask of rivalry. Victor Lang's suitcase, left carelessly in the hall, it contained a folder of documents. Among them was a second forged purchase agreement, this one bearing Sophia Vale's signature as witness. The collector and the artist had conspired together. He would sell the formula. She would use it to become the greatest violinist of her generation. Ambition and avarice had formed a quiet partnership behind the curtain. Sophia Vale's room was the last. In the bottom of her jewel case, beneath velvet trays, lay a single folded sheet, Rossi's own handwriting. A rough sketch of the hidden compartment mechanism, with notes in the margin. Vale must never know. She would misuse it. The artist had stolen the drawing. Obsession had worn the mask of reverence until the final moment. Poirot returned to the drawing room. He stood before the dying fire, the warmth barely reaching him now. Every curtain had been pulled back. Every backstage secret lay exposed. Reflection, behind every elegant performance lies a hidden script. Humans do not wear masks only to deceive others. They wear them to survive themselves. Fear of exposure, greed for what cannot be openly taken, love twisted into possession, resentment nursed in silence. These are the true directors of the human drama. We perform because the naked truth is too fragile, too dangerous, too painful. Yet the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. A letter kept too long, a signature forged in haste, a glance that lingers. These are the tells that no actor can fully rehearse away. I am reminded of the ABC murders, where a man constructed an elaborate pattern of killings to disguise one single personal crime. He rehearsed each detail, each false clue, each public spectacle. Yet the psychology betrayed him. The rhythm of the letters, the choice of victims, the timing, all pointed back to the one true motive he wished to hide. The grand performance collapsed because the little grey cells understand motive better than any script. So, it is here. Behind every curtain, a secret waits. Behind every secret, a motive breathes, and when the motive is laid bare, the performance ends, not with applause, but with silence. The embers glowed faintly. A distant clock chimed midnight. The house seemed to hold its breath. Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. Behind every curtain, a secret. Behind every secret, a motive. Chapter 7. The Final Act. The drawing-room of Eldridge Hall had become a theatre in its final brightest moment. Every velvet curtain was drawn wide, and the crystal chandelier blazed overhead, throwing golden light across polished mahogany and crisp linen. The fire roared high, sending warmth against the chill that still clung to the marble floors. Roses, though wilting slightly, still perfumed the air alongside the faint memory of cigar smoke and Chanel. All the players were assembled. No one spoke. They waited. Hercule Poirot stood in the centre of the room, small, immaculate, commanding. He made an expressive gesture with his small hands as though raising an invisible baton. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice calm and clear, "you have each performed for Poirot. Some truthfully, some not. Tonight we review the performances. Let us lower the lights on illusion. Let the spotlight of truth fall." He turned first to Lord Eldridge. "Milord, you played the gracious host, generous, shocked, above suspicion. Yet the cigar ash on the workshop floor was not yours. You stepped inside. You were near the door when Rossi drank the fatal coffee. Your performance of innocence was almost perfect, except for the ash." Lord Eldridge's shoulders sagged a fraction. He said nothing. Poirot moved to Lady Eldridge. "Madam, you performed the perfect hostess. Dry-eyed, composed, hospitable, even in tragedy. But the arsenic receipt was yours, the amount precise, and your eyes, always dry, betrayed foreknowledge. A woman truly surprised weeps. You did not. Your grief was costume." Her gloved hands trembled once, then stilled. He looked at Elena Rossi. "You, madame, played the grieving widow, indifferent at first, then angry, then broken. But the indifference was too complete. Only when cornered did real feeling appear. You knew of his betrayals. You knew of the poison. Yet you stayed silent. Your silence performed loyalty. Your heart performed hate." Elena looked down. A single tear, real, fell onto her black silk. Poirot turned to Victor Lang. "Monsieur, you played the loyal rival, the jovial collector who laughed away envy. But the forged agreements were yours. The letters to Elena were yours. You wanted the Stradivarius. You wanted the secret. Loyalty does not forge documents. Friendship does not plot in secret." Lang's cigar had gone out. He stared at the dead ash in his fingers. Poirot stepped toward Sophia Vale. "Mademoiselle, you performed the passionate artist, reverent, inspired, innocent of greed. Yet your fingers hesitated over the hidden compartment. Fibers from your gown were caught inside. You stole the sketch. You dreamed of immortality through Rossi's formula. Admiration became obsession. Obsession became theft. The artist's mask was the most beautiful of all, and the most fragile." Vale's shoulders shook. She covered her face with both hands. At last Poirot faced Marcus Hale. "And now we come to our leading performer." He paused. The fire crackled. The chandelier tinkled faintly. "Monsieur Hale, you gave the most convincing performance of all. The devoted apprentice, humble, helpful, grieving. You spoke of years at Rossi's side. You adjusted the violin case with care. You offered comfort to the others, magnifique. But you made one small error. One moment when the mask slipped." He stepped closer. "Your fingers, always tapping when nervous, tapped even when you spoke of loyalty. Your breathing remained perfectly even when poison was mentioned. A truly shocked man breathes faster. A truly grieving man falters. You did neither. Because you knew the secret formula. You knew the contract you had forged. You knew the vial in your toolbox. You poured the arsenic into his coffee, while the rest of us admired the violin. You killed your master to steal his greatest creation." Hale's face drained of colour. His hands clenched. The tapping stopped forever. Poirot drew himself up. Still small, yet towering in that moment. "The performance is over. The curtain falls. The truth, she takes her bow. Now, the director method for Marcus Hale. The performance. He played the perfect apprentice. Quiet voice, downcast eyes, helpful hands, words of devotion. The tell, but observe, the fingers tapped under pressure. The breath stayed measured. True grief accelerates the heart. A true shock disrupts the rhythm. His body refused to play the part. The psychology. I am reminded of the Roger Ackroyd case, where a man performed shock and sorrow so convincingly that even Poirot was deceived for a moment. He rehearsed every gesture, the gasp, the trembling hand, the widened eyes. Yet one detail betrayed him. When he reached for his cigarette case, his hand was steady. A man truly shocked does not have steady hands. The body knows the truth even when the face lies. This is what the little grey cells understand, the psychology beneath the performance. The truth. Therefore, Marcus Hale is the murderer. His devotion was theatre. His ambition was fact. You see it now, non? The curtain has fallen. Silence filled the room. No one moved. The fire burned on, crackling softly. The chandelier cast long shadows across every face. Naked now, stripped of roll and mask. Poirot arranged the crystal glasses on the side table into perfect symmetry one last time. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The drawing room of Eldridge Hall fell into a heavy, almost reverent silence after Poirot's final words. The chandelier still blazed, but its golden light now seemed colder, sharper, as though it too had been stripped of illusion. The fire crackled on, yet its warmth no longer comforted. Roses drooped in their crystal vases. Their perfume had turned faintly cloying. The velvet curtains hung motionless, framing a stage where the performance had ended, not with applause, but with truth. 2 uniformed policemen entered through the double doors, and their boots made dull thuds on the parquet floor. Handcuffs glinted in the lamplight, cold, unyielding metal against the elegance of the room. They moved toward Marcus Hale without hesitation. Hale sat frozen in his chair. His rough tweed jacket, once a symbol of humble devotion, now looked crumpled and ordinary. His fingers, no longer tapping, lay limp in his lap. The colour had not returned to his face. When the officers spoke the formal words of arrest, he did not protest. He only nodded once, a small, defeated motion. The mask of the loyal apprentice had shattered completely. What remained was a young man who had gambled everything on a stolen secret and lost. As they led him away, his footsteps echoed down the long corridor, slow, uneven, no longer part of any rehearsed scene. The grandfather clock chimed once. a single deep note that seemed to mark the end of his performance. Lord Eldridge rose slowly from his armchair. His tweed jacket hung looser on his shoulders now, as though the weight of pretense had been lifted at last. He crossed to the window and drew back one curtain just enough to look out at the dark gardens. I thought control would protect us all," he said quietly. His voice carried no theatrical flourish, only exhaustion and something close to relief. The host who had once directed every moment of the weekend now stood silent, letting the night air cool his face. Lady Eldridge remained seated. Her kid gloves lay discarded on the small table beside her, empty, useless props. For the first time since the tragedy began, her eyes were wet. Not dramatic tears, not rehearsed sobs, just quiet, private weeping, as she looked at her husband across the room. Neither spoke. But the space between them felt for the first time honest. Elena Rossi stood and walked to the fireplace. She stared into the dying flames for a long moment. Then she reached up and unfastened the simple black necklace she had worn since the night of the murder. A thin chain with a small violin pendant. She let it fall into the embers. It glowed briefly, then blackened. "I spent years performing the perfect wife," she said almost to herself. "No more." When she turned back to the room, her shoulders were straighter. The widow's mask had been burned away with the necklace. Victor Lang stubbed out the last of his cigar in the crystal ashtray. The smoke drifted upward one final time and dissolved. He looked older, lines deeper around his eyes and mouth. "I told myself it was just business," he said, "just another deal." He shook his head slowly. The rival, who had laughed too loudly, now spoke in a low, rough voice, stripped of bravado. He glanced toward the door through which Hale had been taken. Then he looked away. Sophia Vale sat curled in the corner of a velvet sofa. Her silk gown was creased, her hair slightly disarranged. The proud artist's posture had collapsed into something smaller, more human. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. No handkerchief, no performance. I wanted to be remembered," she whispered. Poirot stepped closer and spoke gently. "You will be remembered, mademoiselle, but not for what you tried to steal, for what you create honestly from this day forward." She looked up at him, eyes red-rimmed but clearer than they had been in days. A small, some trembling nod was her only answer. The policeman returned briefly to collect evidence, the vial, the letters, the forged documents. Their movements were brisk, professional, unemotional. When they closed the doors behind them, the house seemed to exhale. Poirot moved to the side table. He arranged the crystal glasses one last time. Perfect symmetry, perfect order. Then he turned to face the room. No one met his eyes for long. Each person carried their own private reckoning now. No scripts, no roles, only the raw aftermath of truth. Outside, the first faint light of dawn touched the terrace. Rain had left the gardens glistening. A single bird called somewhere in the distance, tentative, uncertain, alive. Lord Eldridge spoke at last, voice low. "What happens now?" Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. "Now, justice begins. Not with fanfare, not with applause, simply justice." One by one they left the room. Lord and Lady Eldridge together, slowly. Elena alone, head high. Victor Lang last, cigar case left forgotten on the mantel. Sophia Vale paused at the door, looked back at Poirot, then stepped into the corridor. The drawing-room stood empty. The fire burned down to embers. The chandelier dimmed as a servant quietly turned the switch. No applause echoed through the halls. No curtain calls. Only the soft sound of footsteps fading, and the weight of truth settling over the house like morning mist. No applause for this performance, only justice. Chapter 9. After the show. 2 days had passed since the final curtain fell in the drawing room of Eldridge Hall. The house felt different now, quieter, lighter, as though a long, exhausting performance had finally ended, and the stage hands had begun to clear the props. The scent of hothouse roses had been replaced by the clean smell of fresh linen and furniture wax. The velvet curtains were drawn open during the day, letting pale winter sunlight spill across the polished parquet. The fire still burned in the grate, but its warmth felt gentler, less desperate. Hercule Poirot sat in a small side parlour with a cup of strong continental coffee. He had chosen not to leave immediately. Sometimes the most important part of the drama happens after the audience believes the story is over. Lord Eldridge entered first. He wore an ordinary tweed jacket, no longer buttoned to the throat like armour. His posture was easier, shoulders relaxed for the first time in years, and he poured himself coffee from the silver pot and sat opposite Poirot. "I have decided to sell most of the collection," he said quietly. "The Stradivarius will go to a museum. No more private hoarding, no more secrets." Poirot nodded once. The role of the collector who must control everything. It was heavy, no? Eldridge gave a small, rueful smile. "Heavier than I admitted. I'm learning to let go." The man who once directed every detail of the weekend now spoke like someone discovering his own voice. Lady Eldridge appeared a few minutes later. She wore a simple wool dress, no kid gloves, no carefully arranged jewellery. Her hair was softly pinned, and her face, free of the tight mask of composure, looked younger. She sat beside her husband. Their hands rested close on the table, but did not touch. "Not yet. I've written to my family," she said. "The money I lent Rossi, I've forgiven the debt. Officially, it's finished." Her eyes met Poirot's. "I performed the perfect wife and the perfect hostess for so long, I forgot what honesty felt like." Poirot tilted his head. "Truth is not always comfortable, madame, but it breathes more easily than lies." She nodded slowly. For the first time, a real small smile touched her lips, not rehearsed, not performed. Elena Rossi came downstairs carrying a single small suitcase. She had changed from black silk into a simple travelling coat of dark green. The violin pendant was gone forever. "I'm going to Florence," she said. "There is a small house there. Mine, not his. I intend to live quietly for a while. No more pretending." She paused at the door and looked back at Poirot. "Ah, thank you, for seeing what I could not admit even to myself." Poirot made a small, expressive gesture with his hands. "You have shed the role of the wronged wife. Now you may discover who Elena Rossi truly is." She gave a faint nod, then stepped out into the corridor. Her footsteps were light, unburdened. Victor Lang arrived next. He carried no cigar today. His tweed suit looked almost ordinary without the cloud of smoke that usually surrounded him. "I've closed my private gallery," he said. "Too many things bought for the wrong reasons. I'm returning most of the pieces to their original owners or to public collections." He looked at Poirot with something close to shame. "I told myself I was a connoisseur. I was a thief with better manners." Poirot regarded him calmly. Ambition is not a crime, monsieur. But when ambition wears the mask of friendship, it becomes dangerous. Lang exhaled slowly. I'm retiring to the country. No more auctions, no more rivalries. He left the room without looking back. The collector who once laughed too loudly walked away in silence. Sophia Vale was the last to appear. She wore a plain wool coat over a simple dress. No evening gown, no aura of performance. In her hands she carried her own violin case. Not the Stradivarius, but her own modest instrument. I've cancelled all my concert dates for the next 6 months, she said. I'm going to study again properly. Not to chase fame, but to understand the music. Her eyes were still red from earlier tears, but clearer now. I wanted to be great so badly, I almost destroyed myself. Poirot leaned forward slightly. Greatness does not come from secret stolen. Mademoiselle, it comes from truth played note by note. She swallowed. I know that now. Now, the director method for Sophia Vale, after the revelation, the performance. Once she played the inspired virtuoso, graceful fingers, passionate voice, eyes shining with artistic fire. The tell, after the mask fell, the tears were genuine, the breathing uneven, the hands shaking with real remorse. The psychology, I have seen this many times. When the false role collapses, relief floods the body. The pulse steadies, but not from rehearsal, because the war inside has ended. The soul, freed from performance, begins to heal. The truth, Mademoiselle Vale is innocent of murder, but guilty of obsession. Now she has the chance to rebuild honestly. You see it, no? The theatre has emptied, and the artist remains. One by one they left Eldridge Hall. Carriages and motor cars carried them away down the long drive. The house grew still. Servants moved quietly, beginning the long work of returning the rooms to ordinary life. Poirot stood at the window and watched the last car disappear behind the trees. The stage was empty now. The actors had gone home, changed, stripped of their roles, carrying the lessons of the performance they could never forget. He finished his coffee, set the cup down with precision, and smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. The theatre emptied, but the lessons lingered. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. Hercule Poirot sat comfortably in his small London apartment, the one overlooking the quiet square where the plane trees still held a few stubborn leaves against the February chill. A low fire burned in the grate, sending gentle warmth across the room and the faint scent of wood smoke into the air. On the small table beside his armchair stood a steaming cup of tisane, chamomile and mint, its herbal fragrance clean and soothing. Everything was arranged with precision. The cup aligned with the saucer, the spoon placed at an exact angle, the single crisp linen napkin folded neatly beside it. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, Poirot reviewed the performance that had ended at Eldridge Hall. He had received news of the players in the days since. Marcus Hale awaited trial in a cold cell. His ambition had collapsed into confession. The forged contract and the poison vial now exhibits in a courtroom. Lord and Lady Eldridge had quietly begun to repair their marriage. No grand declarations, only small, honest conversations in rooms no longer filled with guests. Elena Rossi had arrived in Florence. Neighbours reported seeing her walk alone along the Arno at dusk, no longer playing any role but her own. Victor Lang had sold his remaining collection at modest prices and retired to a small house in Kent. No more cigars, no more rivalries. Sophia Vale had withdrawn from public performance. She now studied in a modest studio in Paris, playing scales for hours each day with no audience but herself. Each had stepped off the stage. Each carried the mark of truth. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and sipped his tisane. Why, he wondered, do human beings prefer performance to revelation? The answer was simple and ancient. The naked self is fragile. Society applauds the mask, grief that is dignified, loyalty that never wavers, ambition that appears generous. We learn early to smile when we wish to scream, to nod when we burn with envy, to offer comfort when we plot revenge. The mask protects, but it also exhausts. The body grows tired of lying. A finger taps, a breath steadies too perfectly. Eyes avoid what they should seek. Guilt is not silent. Guilt whispers through the smallest gestures. In this little theatre at Eldridge Hall, the masks had been many and marvellous. Greed performed as artistic reverence. Resentment performed as perfect hospitality. Betrayal performed as indifferent marriage. Ambition performed as humble apprenticeship. Each actor believed their role flawless until the spotlight of truth grew too bright. Then the tells appeared. Dry eyes when tears were expected, steady hands when shock should tremble, laughter too loud to be genuine, or fingers that hesitated over a hidden compartment. The little grey cells had seen them all. Poirot leaned back in his chair, the velvet upholstery soft against his back. He was reminded of another case, long ago now, the terrible affair on the Orient Express. There, 12 people had performed together shock, sorrow, outrage, innocence. They had rehearsed their alibis like a chorus, synchronized every detail. Yet one small thing betrayed them all. The rhythm of their breathing, the way their eyes moved when certain names were spoken. A perfect ensemble performance is impossible, because truth is never perfect. Truth stumbles, truth hesitates, truth forgets to coordinate. Lies flow smoothly, only until the body refuses to cooperate. So it had been with Marcus Hale. He had played the devoted apprentice with such skill, quiet voice, helpful hands, words of admiration, that even Poirot had paused to admire the artistry. Yet the psychology had spoken louder than the performance. A man truly grieving breathes faster. A man truly loyal does not tap his fingers when the secret is mentioned. A man truly innocent does not forge a contract in advance. The body knows. The little grey cells listen. Poirot set the cup down with a soft clink. The theatre of crime is eternal, because human nature is eternal. We wear masks because we fear judgment. We perform because we crave approval. We lie because the truth, at first, seems too dangerous, too painful, too small. Yet truth always triumphs. Not because it is louder, but because it is lighter. It requires no rehearsal. It needs no audience. It simply is. In the quiet of his room, Poirot allowed himself a small smile. The Stradivarius secret had been a glittering prop, valuable, coveted, deadly. But the real drama had never been about the violin. It had been about the people who wore masks to possess it, to hide from it, to destroy for it. And in the end, the masks had fallen, not with violence, but with inevitability. He rose and walked to the window. The square below lay peaceful under the street lamps. A light rain had begun, tapping softly against the glass. Poirot arranged the objects on the sill, 2 small porcelain figures, into perfect symmetry. The performance had ended. The stage was empty. The actors had gone home to live without scripts. Until the next theatre of crime, mes amis, Poirot will be watching.